by affiliate and all those good things. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony in just a second, a few housekeeping things. If you wouldn't mind muting, that would be great. And also, if you have questions, feel free to send them in the chat box either to me, which I'm listed as Jill Anderson, or to the group at large. And we can either ask those at the end, and also at the end we'll unmute the line so you can go ahead and ask questions yourself. So feel free to do either. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Tony, and we're going to get started. So, Tony, take it over.
Okay, great. Thank you to Brian for facilitating the meeting. I'd like to thank Carrie Wagner, who put this together for us, and specifically the Google Affiliate Network for setting this whole presentation up. I'm taking over the driver's seat here and trying to make sure that we have everything squared away. So hopefully there won't be too many little hiccups and bugs along the way. But we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Okay. Everyone can still hear me, I hope.
Yes.
So when they asked me to put this presentation together, Imwave is specifically a search engine marketing firm, and we do paid search. And it occurred to me as I was getting ready to do the presentation that many times when people put these presentations together, they talk about themselves and they talk about the things that they need to be successful with search. And they talk about what it is that they can bring to the table. And as I started to think about putting this together, I thought, for those folks who are participating in this call, it's really all about you. It's really all about your program and the things that you need to help you grow your program. And so I'm trying to approach this from a little bit different perspective, and I hope that everyone can appreciate the viewpoint. So let's see. I wanted to just start with a little bit about Imwave. Just so you know a little bit about who we are, you may have heard our name. We are a performance search company. What that means is we actually pay for the ad spend, we buy the keywords, and we send the traffic to our merchant partners. We've been in the affiliate space for over 6 years. We have 4 former marketing directors on staff, and so we, as a marketing firm, know a little bit about branding and top-of-mind awareness and those kinds of things that we can bring to our programs. We have members from our company on the publisher advisory boards for Google Affiliate Network, Commission Junction, and Linkshare. And additionally, we've been in the Inc. 5000 for the last 2 years. Specifically, this past year, we've made number 145 in the marketing and advertising category. And currently, we've served over 4 billion search ads as part of our programs. So what are we going to talk about? Well, what I'd like to talk a little bit about is what are the goals for your programs? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish? I'm going to talk a little bit about sales. For some reason, sales is kind of a dirty word. People don't feel like they are in sales. They don't feel like they want to be in sales, and they feel like sales is a bad thing. To me, I think we're all in sales, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Why would you sell search by affiliate into your company? Why would you talk about it? Why would you try and get that to be part of your program? We'll talk a little bit about how you could and why you could, and the things that it might benefit you by doing it. And then the question is, if you decide you're going to do it, how would you do it? How would you overcome the objections? There's an awful lot of misconceptions about search and search publishers, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the realities and some of the misconceptions and get those cleared up and get them out of the way. So, move right into it. And I'm going to backpedal just a half a second. There is ways that you folks can submit questions if you have them along the way. Brian, as our moderator, will pick up those questions. If they are specifically relevant to the topic where we are at the moment, he'll go ahead and interject with those. Otherwise, I am going to try and save some Q&A time at the end for some open conversation. So, as I sat here and I tried to put this program together, I thought, what are the goals for these programs? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish? And there may be more, but it occurred to me that it boiled down to just a couple of key ones. You're trying to add value to your program. You're trying to protect your brand and your image. You're trying to develop partnerships with your affiliates. And I think most importantly and above all, you're trying to grow the revenue in the program. And so how would you do that? Well, there's a number of objections that you're going to see along the way. And what I'm going to do throughout this presentation is I'm going to throw the questions out there right in the forefront, and then I'm going to address them individually and try and put the misconceptions to rest. And so the first question that we hear an awful lot is, we need to protect our brand, and we can't allow others to use our display URL. One of the big things that you'll see is some misunderstanding about what use of display URL means. Some time ago, when Google came up with their one display URL rule, it changed the way a lot of people handled their affiliate programs. And what it did was it said, a lot of people swung the pendulum and said, no one can use our URL because only one ad will show, and it will drive up our costs. It's not entirely true. That's not entirely accurate, and we're going to talk a little bit about why. So let's start with brand protection, though, because that's the question. The crux of question one is the brand protection issue. First off, we are advocates of strong terms and conditions. Strong terms and conditions are essential to your program. You need to be able to control who is doing what. At the end of the day, not everyone has to have the same terms and conditions. You have the ability and you have the right to offer different terms and conditions to different affiliates that are operating within your program. You set up general-based guidelines of terms and conditions across the board, and then you, as you're running your own program, decide what's in the best interest of generating additional sales for you. You can have one or two trusted partners assisting with search. You can go to your Google affiliate account manager or any account manager or your outsourced consultant or even your internal team. You can get recommendations on some search affiliates that might be in a position to help you. They could be a trusted partner, and they could be someone who you could work with outside of the normal terms and conditions. What's a trusted partner? Well, there are those that you can build a relationship. You want to be able to build a relationship with somebody who's doing search for you. You want to be able to get in contact with them as necessary. And you also want someone who will adhere to your brand guidelines. And so if you're going to operate within search and you're going to have a trusted partner, you need to have someone who's going to understand brand and who's going to be willing to have an open dialogue with you about how to present the brand. From our perspective, we want to present the brand in at least as good a light as you would present it yourself. When you have wide open terms and conditions, sometimes you get into some issues that have caused people to think that search is not beneficial. This helps you alleviate some of those. And so what about the bidding issue? Well, when it comes to overlap with partners' internal search, that internal search could be one of two things. It could be your agency who's doing some search for you. It could be your SEM team internally that's doing search. And how does an affiliate operate in that space without impacting them negatively? It really comes down to economics. And the question, first off, is brand terms. And there's going to be many different size companies, many different size programs, and so there's not a one-size-fits-all. You'll hear me say that a number of times. You may or may not need an affiliate to help you with your brand terms, but you may also benefit by having that. And here's why. First off, if you have 24/7 coverage on your brand terms, you may not need a search affiliate. But there are many companies out there who operate with a search budget that's fixed. And that search budget may run out partway through each month. It may run out the 10th month of the year. It may run out 3 days before the end of the month. The question you have to ask yourself, and the thing you need to do, is analyze your own program and see if your search budget is running out. If your search budget is running out, the next question you ask yourself is, when our campaigns aren't there, who's showing up for our brand? Just because it's not you doesn't mean no one else is showing. Google has said time and time again that it will allow other people to bid on your brand terms. And so If you're missing brand terms, you're missing clicks. If you're missing clicks, your competition is likely taking up that space. A good search affiliate can help you backfill that space without raising your CPCs and without increasing your internal costs. There's also the second tier of brand, which is trademarks, misspellings, and variations. There are a lot of companies that maintain a small list of variations. They may think they have an extensive list. They may think they have it all covered, but search affiliates who are operating as your partners can typically find many more variations than you have. And so the question again is, if your search team isn't there, who do you want to be there? A good search affiliate partner who's operating on your behalf or a competitor. And so I'll give you a for instance. I had a call once with a merchant, and it was just sort of we were trying to decide if we were going to work together, and they told me they had all the variations covered. And I said, well, that's great. I said, and how many variations do you think you have? And she said, I think we have about 100 variations, so we have a big list. Well, the question is 100 a big list? For you, 100 may be a huge list. For somebody else, 100 may be very small. For this particular partner, in 5 minutes, I did some algorithmic searches on using our keyword tool, and I came up with 3,900 variations. And so the question I had posed was, it's okay if you don't want us to do this for you. I understand, and that's your decision, but you have 100 terms. I found 300 or 3,900. The question you really have to ask yourself is, do you want Imwave or some other search partner on your behalf bidding on the other 3,800 terms, or do you want to have those wide open? And so those, again, are questions that you need to ask yourself in terms of what's going to benefit your program. And so question number 2 then comes up. And I touched on this really quickly, but we'll dig into it here. How can I let you direct rank if our internal team/agency is already handling PPC? Won't it drive up my CPCs? And the answer is, it really won't. And it's sort of an economics issue more than anything. And so in the grand scheme of keywords, the overlap between an internal team and an affiliate or a performance company is really typically very small. And the reason that is because we can only fit, as a performance search company who's paid only if we generate a sale at a fixed commission rate that you set, we can really only afford to bid so high and still meet our internal ROI targets. And so if we know our fixed commission is whatever percentage, then we back down from there to come up with our CPCs. Typically, and this is referring to non-branded terms, but typically your company, your internal team, your agency will and can afford to bid much higher. And so it is very rare that if we have the same keyword in play on a direct link issue, that we would be showing up over and above your ad. Now, I'll just try and head off this question because I know it's coming and we'll hit it harder later. I know there's some assumptions that I'm making in terms of the bidding and the auction process, and I know that your position is a function of click-through rate and it's a function of quality score on top of the bid price, plus some other black box metrics that are in play. And so when we make this statement, we make some general assumptions, and I will hit these a couple of times, but I'll say them first here. The assumptions that we're making is, A, that quality score is equal. And the reason we make that is because we would be direct linking, and so the landing page is the same, your site, quality score equal. We talk about click-through rate. We assume click-through rate is at least equal. And in that particular case, I suggest that if one of your performance search partners has a higher click-through rate, that there are other issues that you probably need to solve. But in standard practice, you can write better ad copy for higher click-through rates than your partners, and so I make that assumption as well. So I hope that's fair. in everyone's understanding. And so the next thing we talk a little bit about, and this is the screen where it really all comes to light, and where those assumptions really play a key role. So let's say you have no affiliates direct linking and bidding on any search terms. Given those assumptions that I just mentioned in click-through rate and quality score, let's say you're bidding $1 for a keyword term. You have no partners that are bidding, but your competitor is bidding 49 cents. And I just threw those numbers out as just to illustrate a point. So these numbers could be anywhere across the board. In theory, given all the assumptions I mentioned earlier, your ad should take position 1 at a penny higher than the next highest bidder, which puts you at top position for 50 cents. Now that's without an affiliate in play. What happens if you have an affiliate in play and they're on the same keyword? And that and is a really critical part because the situation, this overlap situation only occurs where we have the same URL and the same keyword. And so in that scenario, you're still bidding your $1. Now you have an affiliate that's bidding using your URL that's something between 50 cents and $1. So let's call it 75 cents. Your competition is still bidding at 49 cents. You still take the top position at 50 cents. And the reason that is because if there are multiple ads on the same keyword with the same URL, Google's calculation happens prior to the auction. Google's calculation on who should enter the general auction happens first. And so the merchant bidding $1 and the affiliate bidding 75 cents go head to head. And quality score equal, click-through rate at least equal, if not better for the merchant. Merchant wins at $1. But you don't have to pay that $1. You don't have to pay that 76 cents. Then you go in against the competition at 49. You still take top spot. If I was sitting in your chair, the next question I'd ask is, okay, well, if that's the case, if that's the way it works, why would an affiliate ever want to do that? When would they ever show up? And the answer to that question is, we want to show up where you don't have keyword presence. We want to find more keywords than you have in place. And we want to find the places where the merchant is bidding 0, and we're bidding 75 cents against your competition, and we take top spot at 50 cents. And so that's why we're looking at things like tail terms. And so it comes down to all search is not equal. And one of the things that, and this isn't a specific question, and maybe it should be, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it, is if you're an affiliate manager or an online manager or something, and you've tried to talk about search internally in your company, and you've met with a lot of resistance, it's typically come from internal search engine marketers, your internal team, or your agency. And what happens is people think search is all created equal. Search is search is search. Well, all search is not created equal. Agencies have their place, and they do it fairly well, most of them. Internal teams have their place and do it fairly well. It comes down to a matter of bandwidth. And we get into that question a little bit later, but the reality is, if you have a search team of 1 or 2 people, and they're doing their CPA reports, and they're reporting on sales, and they're reporting on keywords, they have a finite amount of bandwidth that they're able to go after. And so they could be doing the best possible job they know how to do. They could be the best search guy in the world. But in the course of a day, there's only so much they can accomplish. And these keyword universes are huge. And so that's where the affiliate steps in, and people operating on a performance basis can help you find keywords that you may not be on. So let's look at this. Let's just say your agency typically gets paid a percentage of ad spend. Most of them do. Some of them are changing to a performance model, but that's still more likely it's a percentage of ad spend. So again, your agency could be doing a great job, but why would they spend time looking for a keyword that gets 100 clicks per month? what if that keyword had a 50% conversion rate on your products? So 100 clicks, let's say 50 cents a click, it's $50. Your agency may be getting 8%. Your agency is going to get $4 for managing that ad spend. And so, again, why would they spend time looking for those keywords to get 100 clicks a month? Now, for you or I, 50% conversion, we'd like to have all those clicks. We'd like to have those 50 customers. We'd like to have those sales. Internal teams sometimes lack the resources for the same reason. They're not getting paid the $4, but again, they have a finite amount of bandwidth to operate. Are they going to be able to find the keyword to get 100 clicks a month, even if they're a 50% conversion? Maybe, maybe not. Again, if I was sitting in your chair, the next question I would ask is, okay, Tony, that's great, but why would you want to go after something that makes you $4 a month? Well, the answer is almost overly simple. That's what we do. And my goal is to find 1,000 more just like that. And if I can find 1,000 more just like that, then I can put some real money into our business. And that's how we find the keywords that you're not on. I can't play in the head. You've seen the long tail of keywords. High volume, high cost keywords. Performance marketers can't play in that space because things cost too much and the volume is so very high, and you might need to be there. You might need to be in that spot. If you're selling tennis shoes, you might need to be number one for shoes, for top of mind awareness and for business reasons. We could never be in that spot, and so we operate further down the tail, and my goal is to find 1,000 of these $4 clicks that can generate some revenue for both of us. So question 3 comes back to, why should I let you bid on brand terms? Well, the real answer is, maybe you shouldn't. But take a look at it first. Take a look at your program and take a look at what's happening in your company before you make that sweeping decision about protecting brand. And going back to what I said earlier, if you have a trusted partner, we all have worked with marketing agencies in the past, and we all delegate authority to the brand over to the agency because we trust that they will handle the brand with care. If you can find 1 or 2 partners in the search space that will handle your brand with care, there may be a reason for you to do this. But let's be clear, there is no one-size-fits-all. There isn't one answer for this. If your brand is very well established, you may not need this kind of assistance. If you have no budget restrictions on your internal search or your agency search for your brand terms, you may not have any need for this assistance. How many search terms does your team have in place? Do they have 50 brand terms? Do they have 10 brand terms? What are they calling the brand terms? And so these are the questions that you should be asking before you say, we can't allow this. There'll be some other objections, but these are the main ones. And if you can find a partner with whom you can operate and whom you can trust, then you can have frank conversations about this and how to grow your program. And so how might you do that with a search partner? Well, we have some relationships where it's very clear that their budget runs out very quickly. I have some very large brands, and you'd be surprised, and it'd be great to share them with you if I wasn't under NDA, but some of them, their weekly budgets run out by Tuesday. Some of them, their monthly budgets run out by the 20th of the month. And still another type of partner we have, they have X number of dollars for the year, and they blow through it about September. And so October, November, December, they have no more search budget for the rest of the year. And so what you can do, and this slide represents, is you can allow a trusted affiliate to backfill that space, to bid on brand terms with a cap. And when I say a cap, I mean a set bid price at a fixed level. So if you know you're bidding, again, we'll use $1. If you know you're bidding on a dollar on all your brand terms, but you know that your budget runs out at some point in time, keeping you from having full coverage, you can have a trusted partner come in and bid 75 cents on your brand terms. Using the previous slide where we showed how the CPCs don't go up or down, that partner will not show up on your brand terms throughout the course of the year, the course of the week, or the course of the month, unless you run out of budget and your campaigns are shut off. If your campaigns are shut off, the question you have to ask yourself is, who do you want to be there? Someone representing us in the best possible light, or a competitor? Those are questions you need to ask. Also, if you have a trusted partner, you will be able to reach them. You'll be able to contact them. You'll have cell phones. You'll have instant message. You'll have email. And should there be any kind of overlap, should there be any kind of position effect where as budgets start to get to zero, your affiliates begin to show, you should be able to call them immediately and say, hey, on such and such a term, you're outbidding us. In which case, if they are a trusted partner, they should be willing to go in and say, listen, great, I'll reduce that bid temporarily to make sure that we're not showing above you. Because really, when you talk about partnership, if it's not good for you, it's not good for me either. If I'm doing things that are going to make you uncomfortable or make you have problems with internal politics or policies or cause your search term to be upset, we're not going to have a long-term relationship. And so those are the kinds of things you have to have the back and forth on if you want to operate in this space appropriately. The next question we hear a lot, and we hear this a number of times. I think we're hearing this less now than we used to, but it's still an issue nonetheless. And that is, our natural search already gives us coverage for all terms. So why do we need you to do paid search? Wouldn't we just be paying for sales we would already be already getting anyway? Trying to read that word for word, pardon me. And so that's a good question, and it's one that we just recently had. The executive said, why are we bidding on our brand terms? Why are we bidding for these? We're number one in organic across the board. Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, some users do prefer natural listings, and they'll gravitate to those. Number two is some users prefer paid listings. Now, I know that sounds like it's crazy, and those of us who have been in this space for any length of time, the number of people that tell us, I never click on those ads, is amazing to me. And yet, we're all in a space where we're continually generating sales by people clicking on those ads. And so somebody somewhere is clicking on those paid ads, and not only are they clicking on them, they're buying. And they're paying money for sales. And so we know that some users actually prefer those paid listings. Natural listings do not guarantee sales. How do you prove that? Well, without actually pausing your efforts, it's difficult to prove. But I'd like to give you an example. The example is a publicly traded company. Their 2007 revenues were $2.8 billion. So we're talking about a big company, well-established brand. The plan was to turn off all brand PPC bidding for 90 days. Again, the comment was, aren't we just paying for sales we get anyway? We're number one in most of the places. What actually happened? It wasn't quite 3 weeks. It was about 17 or 18 days into that test. They had to push the panic button. They had to turn it all back on. They had to turn all search back on. They recouped less than 30% of what they lost in paid search. And so that is a specific example of how someone who even at number one for organic isn't going to pick up all of the paid search sales by removing themselves. And here's the key point when you're making this argument. Just because you're not number one paid search doesn't mean your competitor isn't going to take over that spot. And I think that's what happened for these folks. I think they believe that if they weren't paying for those sales, that all the paid search would go away around those keywords and people wouldn't have a choice but to click on the natural, and that's just not the way it is. When you drop out on your brand, somebody else is going to drop in. So, question number 5 is about budget. And I know I mentioned this a little bit before, and this is actually probably going to show up better on a webinar than it did when I presented it on an overhead. But the question around budget covering all the terms you need, so why would we partner with you? If you recall when I gave you the example of the $4 per month keyword, and I said that folks like us, like Imwave, are looking for 1,000 of those $4 terms. I personally don't believe that any one entity, an internal team, an agency team, or even one affiliate, even us, can come up with the entire keyword universe. The amount of keywords that people search for is huge. It's enormous. And finding those keyword terms takes a lot of effort. And so here's a small report, and I think hopefully you can see this. It's a PDF file that I imported into this presentation, and so it's a little bit challenging. But what we did here was we did a quick keyword term overlap analysis. And we did it specifically with a big company like Verizon Wireless against 2 smaller entities. And we specifically wanted to show that the red circle, for instance, they believe they have all the keywords covered, or the green. Either one is in my example. They believe they have all the keywords covered. They believe their budget is sufficient enough to cover everything. And so you do an analysis like this, and we sometimes do this for our partners so that they can see where they stand in this kind of a representation. But you can see this is the specific area right here. They sell similar products and services. Now, I know Verizon Wireless sells additional accessories and different things that may or may not be relevant, but this report shows that Verizon Wireless has 23,434 keywords that are unique to it that neither of those 2 competitors or competing companies have in their stable of keywords. And so the question is, if this company in red would engage a search affiliate to help expand the keyword list, that company could dig down into this area and maybe come up with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 keyword terms that might only get 100 clicks a month, but might have a 50% conversion. And the beauty of it is, given a finite amount of bandwidth for their internal search, given the amount of effort that their agency can put forward, they only pay the performance search based on whether or not they sell. And so the risk is very low. And so that's an example of how your budget may or may not be covering you. So question 6 is kind of a duplicate, but it's important because you'll see it and you'll hear it a number of times. Won't you outbid our ads and bump us off those search terms? And so I'm going to go back one for illustration purposes. In this particular case, if your affiliate is red and you are the yellow, the only time that there is a situation where you may have overlap, you may have that competing bidding, is the area right here in orange, where you have the same keywords and the same URL. Anything in the red isn't going to raise your CPCs because those are keywords that you don't have. Anything in the yellow isn't going to raise your CPCs because those are keywords that your affiliate doesn't have. And so when we talk about raising CPCs, we talk about a very small subset right here that overlaps. But we go back to the same argument as before. the keyword overlap is typically very small. The commission rates that you pay, which you decide in advance and your search partner agrees to, typically force us to bid lower than we would or than you would for your own terms. And so it's really very rare that we would show up on those kinds of terms over and above you. We worked with one very large company in the technology space, and they wanted to engage us, and so we had these conversations at all the levels, and we finally decided, or they decided, that bid caps would make sense. And they did want us to help backfill, and they did want to show us that they trusted us. And so we said, okay, give us the terms and the bid caps, and we'll set up a campaign. In my campaigns, I set them up. I was bidding somewhere around 50 or 60 cents, I think it was, for this particular merchant. I didn't share that with them because they didn't ask. I wanted them to tell me what their bid cap was going to be based on what they were bidding internally. Well, they came back with a bid cap of $2. And so once they did that, I was happy to share with them that, I would be well under that because I was typically only at 50 or 60 cents. And so we had that dialogue, but they had the peace of mind in knowing that they gave us the bid cap and that we would be staying under their internal bids. We had the peace of mind of knowing that we could still operate within that bid cap and generate additional sales. And so had we not had that conversation, had we not had that dialogue and been candid about how to generate more sales, we may not have ever gotten there together. But that gives you an example of how your bids are typically going to be higher than an affiliate's. So the last question that I have before we open Q&A is around sales volume. I get a lot of questions from folks. If we engage you in search, how much volume can you do for us? What is it going to bring to the table? And I think that question is probably generated, if I sit in your chair for a moment, I think that's probably generated by budgets, the need to have budgets, the need to do projections, and to try and figure out how sales for the affiliate channel fits into the overall picture. The problem is that the dollar values that can be earned with this kind of campaign vary wildly. And so a projection is almost impossible to give you without running some sort of initial test. I have two extreme examples that I want to throw out there, and I admit that these are extreme, but they're specific to illustrate a point. Both of these merchants are very pleased with the sales results that we've generated for them in our search efforts. And so one is a travel company where we generate around $3 million per month into their program. The second is a small retail company where we generate about $5,000 per month for their program. And so those are very differing numbers, and yet both of those merchants are very pleased with our efforts. And so I would say to you, if you're running a $50,000 program and you think that engaging search is going to quadruple it to $200,000, it's probably not realistic. On the other hand, if you're running a $150,000 program, could you get 25% to get up to $200,000? It's very possible. But what it comes down to is it's all about the expectations. And so we need to have some open dialogue, or you need to have open dialogue with whomever you have this conversation with in regards to what's the expectation. What typically happens is we run a test. We do it for a finite period of time, and during that test period, we can understand our CPCs, we can understand our ROIs, and we can understand the volume of sales that we can bring to you profitably from our perspective. After 30 or 60 days of running a test, we get a very good picture of what the run rate looks to be. And that's the best way for us to gauge with you of what the potential is in the program. To throw a number out prior to even testing is really just throwing darts at the wall, and many times we just won't do that only because, again, from a sales perspective, we want to under-promise and over-deliver. And so whether I'm selling it to you or you're selling it internally, it's all sales. Anytime you're trying to convince somebody to do something that you think you should be doing, whether it's at home or at work or with friends, it's all about sales. It's all about you presenting an argument in the best possible light and trying to get somebody to understand your perspective. And so from that standpoint, if I come out and say, yeah, we're going to do $200,000 a month for your program, and we don't, you're going to be unhappy with me. And you might have been happy enough if I did $25,000 or $30,000. And so we need to understand each other and where we're coming from so that we don't make guesses and run into problems. And so I mentioned a test, and let me talk a little bit about what a test could look like. It doesn't have to, but this is what it could be. Direct linking with your display URL. We should have the rights to use the trademark in our ad copy. We will operate within any brand guidelines, and any good partner will. And so if you tell us we don't want our brand to be associated with cheap or discount, we don't want it to be next to coupons, any of those kinds of things that are established in your brand document, let us know or let your partner know. They will adhere to those. At least they should if they're a good partner, because we don't want to represent you in a bad light. And so it's hard to sell a product when you can't tell the customer where they're buying the product. Those kinds of ads don't get good click-through and don't get good conversion, and that's why trademark and ad copy is really sort of essential. We talk about trademarks and variations, and we talked a little bit about this before. Many times your brand can be boiled down to 5 to 10 to 15 specific keywords. Boil it down to that. Have an initial trial period, prove the conversion rates, exclude those specific terms, but let us talk about variations and see if there might be some keyword space that we can cover there. The key is that any partner you work with, the testing parameters should be, and for us they are, flexible. And so, again, we want to look at ways to help you grow your program. If it's not a win-win for you, it's not long-term for us or for any partner. And so what we like to do is we like to set up a phone call. We like to dig into what the program is all about. We like to dig into what problems you're having. We like to dig into what you're doing now that's working, what you're doing that might not be working, and then we can sort of make recommendations and say, look, we would suggest this or this. You may or may not need this part, but we could do it. And so, again, flexibility and expectations. So let me give you a couple examples of some things that we tried. Again, we have this large travel company that I mentioned earlier. They have two companies that they're testing. I marked it as SBA. That stands for Search by Affiliate. And they created special terms for those two performance search companies. What they did is they broke down some geographies and said, in these geographies, we are very well covered for brand, but outside those geographies, we are not. So you can do trademark in some geographies. They did allow the display URL. This started off as about a 6-month test. And so years later, we're still running, and it's a great partnership. And again, the run rate is pretty substantial at $3 million. On the other end of the spectrum was an online retailer. They attempted search previously, and the test failed. The affiliate lost over $3,000 in ad spend and generated, I think it was somewhere on the order of $100 in commission. So that, a lot of people don't realize that with search partners. This affiliate spent $3,000 in ad spend, generated nothing back. Didn't hurt the merchant. Nothing lost there. All the risk was on the affiliate side. The program was re-reviewed And the merchant came back and said, look, we've enhanced our conversion rate on the website, and we might be able to do another 2% commission. Well, we don't know if that works or if it doesn't work, but it's worth reviewing and it's worth revisiting, especially if you have a good partnership. And so in the retest, monthly run rate on sales is about $50K. And so we went from a program that failed in search to one that's now generating about $50,000 a month in sales for the partner, and everyone's happy. So again, it comes down to having those conversations, discussing what the needs of your program are, and then tailoring something that could work for you. Takeaways: no one-size-fits-all rule for any program. Many times when someone, an account manager or an outsourced program manager or a consultant says search, there's an immediate no, an immediate response that we don't do search. And it doesn't have to be that way because it can be a flexible kind of a test. And so try to think through how search might be able to benefit you and then present it in that way. There's many misconceptions about search. Admittedly, some folks have given search a bad name. That doesn't mean all search is bad, and that doesn't mean that anything that's not internal or agency search is bad as well. And I think we've covered why, even if your search team is doing the best possible job they know how to do, even if they're the greatest search guy in the world, there's probably still space out there to cover and grow your program. Search can play an important role in your program. There are clear ways where someone who's operating in a performance way at very little risk to you can help you to generate sales and grow your program. You have to overcome the objections. And again, we're all marketers to a certain extent. We're all in sales. We are all trying to convince people to try things that we think are going to grow the program. We're all trying to have people understand that there are different ways of doing things, trying to have them understand that one size does not fit all and that all search is not bad. And if you have the right conversation to overcome the objections, you can find ways to grow your program. Let your search partner help you sell it in. Many times, if you can get the parties necessary on a phone call with your trusted partner or with who you've chosen to be your trusted partner, a couple of things can happen. Number one, the people that are having doubts can understand that these are real people who run real businesses. They can understand that they understand brand guidelines and that they will represent your company and your products in the best possible light. And they may have the conversation or the answers to the questions formulated in a better way to help develop understanding. And so if you have a good partner, they'd be willing to get on the telephone and have this conversation with you so that you can understand or that other people in your organization can understand how this can benefit you. And test. Everything we do in this space is so measurable, and that has good points and bad points. And the good points are we can measure it, and if it doesn't work, we don't do them anymore. If it does work, then we know they worked. And so if you're unsure about search, set it up as a test. Set it up for 90 days. Try and do a search with a Search by Affiliate trusted partner for a short period of time with a specific end date. You know, these are businesses. We don't have to go through great ordeals to separate at the end of the test. If it doesn't work out the way we projected at the beginning, we stop doing it. And we say, look, it didn't work the way you suggested, but if you do it over 90 days, the risk to you is very small. And yet you can prove out the concept. If it works, great. We all win-win. If it doesn't work, it was a finite experiment. We tried. It didn't work the way we thought. We didn't lose very much. And so it's sort of still a win-win. And we separate amicably. We still talk to each other. We still see each other at industry events. And we still have conversations. And maybe, just as the other partner, maybe we revisit it sometime down the road, and we work together in a different way. But test, test, test. And, folks, that's really the end of the presentation. Again, my name is Tony Pantano. I've put all my contact information up on the screen. If you have questions, we can entertain them now. If you're like me and you think of some later, please feel free to contact me. Much easier to reach via email than by telephone, although I did put my number up there for you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that may have come up that weren't addressed here. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to listen. And I do think we have a few minutes left for questions. Brian, correct?
Yes, we do. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them aloud now, or you're welcome to send them to me directly or to the group. So feel free to do whichever you'd like.
I have one question, Tony. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. When you were speaking earlier about the URLs that are used to, match an ad going to the same place, and therefore your ad wouldn't use, it's one of the earlier slides you showed. You were referring to the display URL. Is that what they're using to do those matches so that they don't have two ads going to the same location?
Correct. By way of history, if you remember about 4 years ago, you did a Google search and 17 Amazon ads would show up or 17 eBay ads would show up. And Google decided that that was a bad user experience. And so what they said was, it's called the single serving rule, the one display URL rule. It's got many names, but essentially they will only show one ad per display URL for any given search.
Now, is that per domain, or could you have, if your display URL was ebay.com/123 and mine was ebay.com/abc, would they both show?
I think I heard you ask. Give me your example domains one more time.
If it was ebay.com/123, because you could put slashes in the display, or ebay.com/abc, those are two different display URLs, but it may just be a variation on how you actually enter it in. They may both go to the same landing spot. Are they looking at the domain itself, or are you actually saying the exact same display URL?
Great question. Thank you for asking it, and thank you for clarifying it, because I did miss your example. Google is looking at what they call the top-level domain, so something.com. So in your example, ebay.com/anything equals ebay.com/anything.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure. That was a great question. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Going once. So Tony's information is up on the screen. Feel free to email him or myself, bbenedict@google.com, or Carrie Wagner, who works directly with Imwave, and her email address is cwagner@google.com. And so I appreciate everyone for your time. Tony, thanks again for doing this and presenting to everyone, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Brian, for facilitating. I appreciate it, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.